right, everyone, this is the Kwak Brothers podcast, and today we have a special guest with us, Jesse Goldberg. He is a hard money lender, and today we're going to be talking about lending itself, questions you may have, and we are going to have a live audience participation, as you guys can see. Some of you guys might be listening to this while you guys are driving or working out, so the format of this conversation would strictly be for audio. We're not going to do any visual presentation or anything like that, so you guys aren't missing out in terms of what we're going to be doing in our conversation. So, Jesse, I want to actually, before heading over to Jesse or turning over the mic to Jesse, I want to make sure I edify him a little bit. Jesse is actually one of the fine unicorns out there that I actually trust in terms of lending. There are very few, quote unquote, hard money lenders that I would really trust. And I'm not saying that hard money lenders are bad, but there's been the few people that I would say have kind of ruined it for everybody, right? So there's a smaller piece of the pie that kind of ruined it for the larger piece. There are lots of quote unquote scam lenders out there, including Facebook, LinkedIn. I mean, wherever you can go, right, on social media, you will run into fake or scams. So Jesse is here to represent the good side of hard money lending, the hard money lending that actually cares about the industry, and that, you got to treat these people treat the hard money lenders as like a partner, right? And I think that's the theme that we're going to have as far as the conversation we're going to have. So Jesse, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. Introduce yourself, the company that you are part of, and what you do for real estate investors.
Absolutely. So yeah, as he said, thank you, Sam. Jesse Goldberg, and my company is Father and Son Lending. We like to think of ourselves not so much as a hard money lender because we're not a overarching industry. We don't have a hedge fund running us or anything like that. It is our capital and our investors' capital. And the main thing we look to do specifically in this industry is help people, which is exactly what Sam was saying. There's kind of this line that's been crossed in the sand by a lot of hard money lenders and private money lenders that it seems like they're just out there to get their money. And after 35 years in the industry between myself and my father, we are really here to help investment and growing your investments and making sure that we can provide you funds in a way that it's both beneficial to you and, of course, to us as well.
Cool. Yeah, so I know we did a webinar before between Jesse and I, and we want to make sure we do this again just because this conversation doesn't seem to end, right, between the investors and the lenders. There's always a consistent changes to, in my opinion, what I see in the lending world. I think this is a crucial conversation to have. So in behalf of the investors, so being a real estate investor myself, I want to represent the investor side. I know, Jesse, you have some education in that as well. So a couple questions I have in mind, and that kind of, I think a lot of the investors that are listening in may have the same question as I do. So Jesse, what is the main difference between what you do versus the banks?
I mean, the main difference we do, and this is kind of for every hard money, private money lender, the main difference is we're not verifying the same information. The process to get a loan is a lot easier. There's a lot less paperwork, and more than anything else, it's a lot faster. So there's less barriers to actually go through to get a loan, which is incredibly important for investors because you need to acquire the property, you need to get it under contract, and you need to make sure that your investment is solidified as quickly as possible.
Right.
So less red tape as far as getting the loan. And, there's also other barriers that regular banks and mortgage industries, companies go through that we won't. So things like income aren't as important. Things like tax returns in some cases aren't as important. And more so, the type of properties that we're looking into are going to be a lot different than what banks are looking into, which are primarily going to be focused on your primary home, maybe some secondary homes. But, the main thing we're doing is cutting that tape and getting access to funds quickly, efficiently, and more expensively, but as cheap as we can possibly make it.
Right. And this is something that I always mention guys like Jesse that are representing private slash hard money lenders. And I know Jesse mentioned that he's not quite, the hard money lending world, so to speak. It's really important to treat the lenders as almost like a business partner, right? So Jesse, give us some couple etiquettes as far as, us investors, we should be advised about when dealing or when working with a private lender like yourself.
Sure. I mean, one of the main things to talk about, and I think it comes up a lot, is you shouldn't approach us like we're going to be the enemy. In a lot of cases, investors come forward and treat it like we have to negotiate, like there's some sort of situation that would be in your favor that you can kind of dig out of us. In reality, and this again goes for both private and hard money, as long as it's set up as an industry or a firm, we have to do right by our investors, which are the ones also contributing money. So there's things we can talk about. There's things we can't talk about as far as numbers, like points, like rates. And the main thing you really want to do is just bring everything forward with what you're looking to do in the deal. And in 99% of the cases, myself or a lot of the good guys in the industry are going to go ahead and get you the best rate, because we don't want to screw you over. We want to make sure that you're coming back to us. We want to make sure that you're doing continued business. So the main things is, like Sam said, treat us like we're going in on an investment with you, because in reality, we're investing our money in you as an individual, not so much the property. We want to make sure you can complete your investment and frankly, make money off of it.
Right, absolutely. So, a couple of things, and I know there's lots of, the business of private lending. I mean, for you guys, in your perspective, obviously you guys are making money off of the interest and the money that you're lending now. So, what is, I would say, a fair rate? And I know you don't have to quote an exact rate if you don't want to, Jesse. But what is a fair practice as far as the products that you guys are putting out there? In terms of what is a range, or I guess a ballpark figure, what investors should look for, what's expensive, what is not. And I know that I don't want to seem like I feel like I'm forcing you to tell us your I guess business secrets or practices to, but just give us an idea. What would be an expensive, like in your eyes, in your opinion, for investors when it comes to working with private lenders?
Sure. It's hard to say. That's the main thing. And like you said, I can't really pin down numbers, because something that's expensive for one person isn't going to be expensive for another, because it's really going to depend on the personal financials and portfolio, their experience in the industry, and really how we can minimize risk in us lending, and also the risk of you as an investor completing the project. So it's hard for me to say good rates versus bad rates, because somebody with a 480 credit score, their good rate's going to be a lot higher than somebody with an 800 who's got a portfolio that's miles long. In general, I mean, when you're looking into this kind of financing, you can expect rates from 7% up. For us, if we're not doing max leverage on a rental property, which we consider lower risk, as long as the property is rented out, we can go as low as around 6.5%. But these are in very specific circumstances where, we're going 60% on a deal, and the individual has experience, they have a good credit score, and they have proven that they're financially responsible and have been in the industry. And then on the other range, I mean, we like to be decent. We like to stay around 12% maxed out. But there are circumstances, again, where somebody has challenged credit score. They don't have as many investment properties, and this is their first off, and they have limited capital. So situations like that, a decent rate could be 10% for them. But in general, if you're going out and looking for a rate, you really have to consider these things. You have to consider, what's your FICO? If you're over 650, okay, you can expect something in the single digits maybe. If you're under 600, you can expect something 10 plus. But as far as an expensive rate, I would say anything in the 15% range and up would be considered expensive.
Yeah.
But It's hard to say expensive, because if you have access to money and you only need it for 6 months, I would say sometimes a 15% rate, if you know you can get in and out, isn't the worst situation. And it's something that lenders have to kind of conform to, with our investors saying this is the percent that we need back on each loan. So that's kind of the range. You can expect anywhere from 7 to really 20% I've seen, though those are far more predatory. But it's really going to come down to the individual investor, and it's absolutely something you should kind of shop around, see individuals that have lower credit score minimums and lower investment properties owned minimums. So there's definitely ways of getting around those numbers and finding out what's lowest for you, quote unquote.
Yeah. I guess expensive will be a subjective term, depending on, how you look at it. And for me, 12% is not bad. 12% is, I think, is pretty average, right? If we're looking at 7 to 6%, 6 to 8%, I mean, that's pretty, I'd say, comfortable, is the right word, I would say. Yeah. But yeah, anything that I would see as, anything that exceeds 13, 14, I would start to say, well, let me go shop around. So
sure.
Yeah, that's probably where I'd be. But again, you're right. It definitely depends on FICO score, or different varying factors. Have you invested before? Is this your first time? I can definitely see that. So not to put or not to repeat what the master, quote unquote, has said. I think that's a very important point, as far as understanding there's different variables that go with actually who you are and also what the property might look like. So I guess another hot topic here is scam lenders, right? How do we determine what's real, what's fake? How do we know if we're getting scammed, Jesse? So give us an idea. What are some criterias, or what are some signs that we should look for, real versus fake?
Sometimes it can be hard to tell. I mean, honestly, I've seen some advertisements where I go, oh, they're offering an amazing rate, and it seems like they're going through all of the proper instruments to make sure somebody's eligible, and it ends up being a complete scam. So it's really hard to determine. I think one of the biggest advantages you can have over a lender and ensuring that they're doing right by you is having a conversation with them. I mean, I think communication is the biggest way to tell, if something's legitimate versus if it just doesn't sound right. So if you're out there looking, absolutely set up a conversation to have over the phone. I mean, it's fine to talk via email just to see if you can make a deal work, but I would always have a conversation with the person and make sure, everything sounds right. One of the biggest things that come up, and Sam, I'm sure you've seen this a lot and have had complaints about it, is people charging upfront rates. That seems to be the indicator of a scam. In reality, I've discovered this more as we've increased our partners in lending. Some do charge upfront rates, quote unquote, that are guarantees. And these are the larger hard money companies. If an individual is presenting themselves as a private lender, or if they're very small and there's not much presence, I would consider an upfront fee as absolutely a scam. And when I say upfront fee, I mean after the application is in. And those upfront fees really do cover cost of appraisals. They cover cost of legal fees going in. And the guarantees are refundable for some of those companies. And some of the ones I know are a company called DLP out of Pennsylvania, which is one of the largest. So they do exist. They're very rare, and it should be an indicator if somebody is saying, we need money up front, we need points up front before we continue with an application or before I get you rates. That's an absolute scam. They should be very clear about what they're able to offer in a situation before charging any fees.
Yep, I definitely agree. Yeah, and there's also instances where, in my experience, we had a particular quote unquote private lender that was asking me to send them an email of my credit report, right? So it's like, from there, I'm like, okay, this is clearly a scam, because they're not using a third party verification, or I know some institutions, especially banks, they have their own scoring model, right? So the fact that this particular lender was asking me for a copy of a credit score, That was a huge red flag. And also, they didn't even know what FICO / versus Vantage was. So that was like, okay, it's obvious this person has no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think that kind of leads us to the next question is, what are the differences between a FICO score / Vantage score? And I know there's certain apps and certain softwares, or I should say, subscription that you make. Tell us a little bit about that, Jesse, as far as what are the differences are FICO versus Vantage.
I mean, as far as lending, we kind of calculated very similar to mortgages, and it's this kind of rounded off number between what you're able to access and what we're able to access for risk. So FICO, Vantage, they're all kind of mixed in scores that you're going to see on your end. We see a much more, I'd say, microscopic view of your credit score, and that's through our underwriters. So I'm not an underwriter. They would know a little bit more about differentiators and how those scores are calculated. But, in reality, as far as lending, when we ask things like FICO, we're just getting an idea. And it's the same thing as Vantage or any of the other scoring systems, and there are many. But in reality, we're just trying to get a ballpark. We're always going to run a credit score just to make sure on our side the risk assessment is accurate to what system we're using. But each of those have their own merits for you to analyze your credit. But from a lender side, we use a much different look into your credit score. So I can't really give exacts on the differences and benefits, but in reality, it's really more for you, those scores. Whereas a mortgage company, a banking company, a lending, whether they be private or hard, they're going to use a different algorithm to assess your credit score. So it's kind of hard to explain in an easy way.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't even know that much about how our underwriters do it. But it's just our assessment of risk, and that's the main thing we're using your credit score for.
Yep. So I guess the last quick question before we go and leave, I guess the floor for question for anyone who's joining us live here for the podcast. So one last question. So if you are to deal with the perfect real estate investor candidate or a client, what would they have in terms of, preparation, number one? What would you expect out of this perfect client if they were to walk through your doors?
Sure. I mean, the perfect client is always going to be somebody that's organized and knows their deals inside and out. It's not so important for things like FICO score and investment history, as long as we can show that you really understand what deal you're going into. You understand the numbers inside and out. You know exactly how you're going to turn this property, whether it be making sure that you have renovations in place to create a 3 to 5 year term on the loan and increase rental. What really matters is you really having everything written out, documented, and you know the deal. So, Sam, maybe you can talk about how you prepare deals, and I'll tell you if it's the perfect thing for me to look at. But I think with your experience what you need to know about individual properties, and all of that information is exactly what we're looking for. We need to know the numbers. We need to know exactly what you're going to put in rehab. So tell us a little bit more about how you prepare them.
So in my perspective as a real estate investor, and I this is a good dialogue, because having dialogues like this with lender actually gave me an idea how to prepare for a conversation with with a private lender. Now, so I did take other classes in training and education, but I think it also came with experience having conversation like this with the lender. So one of the things that I do, first of all, of course, like what Jesse mentioned, you got to know your deal ins and outs, right? What are your 3 exit strategies, right? You never want to just go and say, well, I'm going to fix and flip this one property and I'm going to sell it, right? You always want to have 3 backup plans or contingencies, I should say. So if fix and flip didn't work, well, I better figure out how to refi this and rent it out, or I'm going to go ahead and straight out sell it for seller financing. And so you got to have different exit strategies ready to go. And that shows a private lender, in my opinion, at least that you're prepared, right? You know how to deal with if there's ever going to be a mess, and it's more of a when are you going to have a mess. You're going to have to figure out, okay, it's time for plan B, right? If plan B doesn't work, plan C. Sometimes you would have to go to plan D and E sometimes. Sometimes it gets crazy. So in my experience, this is what I do. And I usually create two separate sets of document. One, I call it the I Love Me book, right? So this I Love Me book is all about who you are, your business, your qualification. It's going to include your 2 years of tax returns, right? Sometimes the lenders may see that. It's going to include maybe your most recent credit score. If you don't have it, that's fine. And usually I know private lenders, they have their own software. They can use that to pull either hard or soft pull. I also include anything and everything that can qualify me to be a credible real estate investor. So I've actually taken some training courses on real estate investing. So I put in my certificates, right? I put in my completion curriculum, the curriculum that I completed, or I even put my college diploma in there too. A copy of my college diploma shows that I have some formal education, right? I know it's sometimes not necessary, but I do understand that some banks have a different underwriting criteria and underwriting algorithm for people who have a 4-year degree. I didn't know that, but I found out through having a conversation, just like what we're doing right now. So I put together an I Love Me book, right? I put all my things in there, right? I put my S corporation, EIN, right? Sent by the IRS. I put my articles of corporation, or if I'm an LLC, I put my articles of organization, my bylaws. If you're a corporation, I put my operating agreements. What else? Biography about you, your partners. So all these little things. I get it. It's impressive, but sometimes, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me, Jesse, but it's not a matter of what you're getting funded for, but it's how you present yourself, right? Just by the fact that you wore up, you dressed up today, quote unquote, you might be in a more impressionable date, right? I think that's one thing. It's kind of funny. This one girl told me it's not about what you look like; it's more about how you present yourself. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so that's a little side note analogy as far as what I'm talking about here. You may not be the strongest real estate investor, but in my opinion, and Jesse, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Even if this might be your first deal, if you come prepared with like an I Love Me binder, right? It's like leather binder. It's got all your information. Everything's tabbed, right? And you can just if the lender says, well, I need to see your 2 years of tax returns. Well, you flip to the page and boom, right? Give them copies. Now, the next set of document would be all about the deal. So, address, the analysis, how did you come up with the repair budget? Do you have an actual bid from the contractor? Who are your contractors? What are they like? Are they licensed? Are they insured? Are they bonded? Which tells me as a lender, if I was a lender, that mitigates risk, right? I think that's huge. Another thing, I forgot to mention, having a general liability insurance for your business. And if your contractors are also licensed, perfect. I can go on and on and on as far as what you can add to your I Love Me book and your deal package. So, Jesse, am I missing anything? I'm just listing out the things that I usually do for.
It's everything you're including. And the main thing with this too is if you're going to refinance, if you're going to go into a bank loan, which I generally recommend getting out of, a private hard money loan, if you plan on keeping the property as a rental,
right.
You're going to need all this information anyway. So Sam, everything you have for your I Love Me book is exactly what you're going to need to complete a bank application.
Yep.
But more so, it's also how you complete a hard or private money loan. So we're going to have an application that's going to look very similar or exactly like a 1003. So it's all the information you're going to have to bring forward anyways. And if you can present that up front, it's perfect and we'll love you immediately. As far as the information for the property, you're pretty dead on. There's so many different documents depending on what type of deal it is. So it's hard for me to say,
right.
what you should have. But in general, if it's a leased property, make sure you have the lease agreements. If it's a ground up construction property that you're trying to build, you should have the complete plans. And like you said, if you're using a general contractor, those numbers are going to be much more exact than your estimates of what rehab's going to be.
Yeah.
So that does put, a lower risk on what we're lending out and gives us a better assessment of what the property is. So all of that combined, I think is perfect to bring to the table. And even if you're talking to somebody via email, you can send over that information about the property when you're first getting it analyzed. And this I wanted to mention because this is probably the number one thing that happens when somebody reaches out to me for a first-time deal. You can share the address with us. We're never going to go behind your back and steal the property. We're lenders because frankly, we don't want to do real estate investing. We want to invest in the investor. So never have any fear of sending an address to a specific lender that you've worked with, or even one that you see as reputable, because we're really just going to look at it and say yes or no, and then have a discussion on if we can help. But feel free to send all that information up front, and you're going to get a much faster response instead of going back and forth and maybe wasting days that you have on your contract agreement.
Yep. And like what we mentioned before, the private lender isn't your outsider, right? I treat my private lenders and investors and folks that fund my deals as the people on my corner, right? If this was a boxing match, I treat the people that are lending me money. They're in my corner. They're my team, right? I'm not like they're in the other side of the desk, so they must be the enemy. No, it's like treat them as your business partner, because if they're lending you money, then they better know about who you are. They better have a reason to trust you, number one, right? So treat your private lenders as a business partner, and you'll never know what sort of good results you'll get. I know a lot of people are just plain rude to lenders because they think they're out to get them or anything. I think that's completely and I wouldn't say wrong, but it's a misunderstood expectation of what you'll get from a lender, especially the right one. So Jesse, thank you so much for the insight. And I think we'll take some questions from those who are listening to us live. If you guys can go and put it on the chat box on the software. If you guys have any specific question, we will unmute you. We'll give you a chance to talk. Does anyone have questions as far as lending practices, what we can expect from the lending world? And the chat box should be readily be available to you guys right there. So if you don't have any questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. But this is for you guys. This is a time for you. And most of you guys all of you guys are muted. So if you guys would like to get unmuted, go ahead and put your name or raise your hand or something on your chat box.
It's a shy group.
Very much so, yeah. So if guys, no question is a dumb question. That's huge. And because you feel like it, and don't feel like you can't ask a question because you don't want to look bad. It's better to look bad than mess up and lose money. It really is. Trust me, guys. I've been there, right? I was a shy guy in the room, right? Didn't want to raise my hand because I didn't want to look stupid or dumb or anything like that. But had I had the question answered by the professional or the expert in front of the room, I probably would have saved, tons of money by not making that mistake. So guys, there is no such thing as stupid or wrong or bad question. Every and any question it drives from your curiosity to learn. So I appreciate any questions that you guys would ask. So I guess we don't have much questions. This is I think we did a pretty good job here. Hold on. So Daniel says, I don't have a mic. What if my 2 years of tax return isn't impressive? Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the lender, we for one do look at tax returns, but we're more so just making sure that your tax returns have been filed and you're following all federal procedures. It's more of a red flag if you tell me that you filed nothing for the past 2 years and you've got some issues with the IRS. We look into that stuff anyways, but that's mostly what the tax returns are for. It's also to get somewhat of an idea for your financials, but it's not the end all be all. So if you have tax returns that aren't impressive, maybe you had a bad year and you were self-employed, or maybe your pure income is through real estate and you've been investing for the past 2 years, which is very typical. It's not so much of a problem. It's more of us just doing our due diligence to make sure that you have the financial aptitude to continue on in this industry, and we're not going to get in a situation with somebody who's evading taxes or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, and this is surprising, and I know some of you guys, this is super duper important, and this comes down to ethics. and moral issue here. But I know some of you guys like to quote unquote exaggerate your income on applications, even credit card application. Guys, I got to tell you, and Jesse will agree, there's been federal cases where banks have actually prosecuted just average people like you and me for defrauding the banks, guys. So just be honest, and I got to tell you, I'm guilty of this too. When I was in high school, when I applied for my first credit card, yeah, I did put down a little bit of an exaggerated figure. But guys, there's been federal cases, and I can leave links on actual cases that actually happened, where actually a bank went back 9 years of a lady who applied for a credit card. They went back 9 years on that application and decided to prosecute based on that. So you guys can see it's very serious issue. Exaggerating, I get it. Most people, the banks won't quote unquote care as much, but there has been instances because you're essentially lying to the banks and saying, oh, I'm making $100,000 a year when you're not, right? So Daniel, to kind of, I guess, address your question, there has been people, I actually have a buddy of mine, and I look up to this person. He's a mentor. He's a business funding guy, right? He goes out and finds business funding for people. And he had a client who legit just wrote $30,000 a year, very humble, right, figure, nothing impressive, I should say, but she still got funded for business funding. So guys, telling the truth is always the right thing, right? Being honest with your lender. Again, your lender is your business partner, right? Treat them like a business partner. You don't want to be dishonest with your business partner, right? Sooner or later, they're going to find out either or, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, unlike a business partner, we have the methods that we would find out very quickly. So that's the easiest way to ruin a relationship.
Yeah, I would assume so. So yeah, don't lie to your business, don't lie to anybody, right, about your income. If you're at $30,000, that is okay, right? You just put that on your application. Just being honest is better. And probably if you put $100,000 and if you don't make $100,000, you probably will end up getting overfunded, right? That sometimes it's kind of out of your responsibility, so to speak. So yeah, that's my thought on it. I've personally seen legal cases, right? So be careful. That's just what I have to say. Civic has a question. Do you guys refi the loan into a conventional loan? I think that's more for you, Jesse.
Yeah. And I mean, you can talk about this too on your side. Also, I'm curious if your name is actually Civic or if your company is Civic. I see what you're doing. So in general, I mean, most hard money loans and private money loans, they're meant to be short-term. They're meant to be either a bridge, which is what a lot of people consider hard money loans. They're just bridge loans. It's either a bridge or it's a way for you to acquire properties fast. And it's never meant to be the end-all be-all loan if you plan on holding the property. If you're flipping the property and it ends up taking longer, we can always extend the loan. But if you think it's, the market's going down and it's going to be another couple of years, then I would absolutely consider refinancing into a conventional loan. But that also has its, disadvantages, because if you do have a challenged credit score, if you do have challenged financials, they're going to verify income. It might not always be possible. So if you can go with the bank loan, I think refinancing into a bank loan is the best option. And in a lot of cases, and I may have talked to some people that are participating in the chat right now. I tell people sometimes that going with a bank loan for their initial loan is going to be cheaper and better for the property. It really depends. But in general, I think refinancing into a conventional loan, if you plan on holding the property even as a rental, or if some extenuating circumstances come up that the property can't sell as fast as the end of the term, conventional loan is the way to go as long as you qualify.
Yeah. I can see some of you guys are trying to unmute yourself, guys. If you guys would like to speak, go ahead and put it on the chat box, please, so that, we can give you guys a turn. If you guys unmute yourself, we start to hear background noises and it might be distracting for myself, Jesse, or anybody who's trying to listen. So if you guys would like to get unmuted, feel free to put it on there. And so let's see. Danielle says, can we have a money partner to show that we can finance the rest of our deal if we don't have income?
Sure, but you might not always need it. The more important thing is that you have reserves and liquidity. So even if you don't have income, the main thing you're going to need that we always look for, I can't speak for some more predatory lenders, but the main reason we're looking for reserves and liquidity is to ensure that you can pay for your loan. So if that's more so what you're looking at, and we're not talking about down payments, then as long as you have capitals and reserves, or you have liquidity, so a 401k that you can liquidate, an IRA, that's all going to be okay for us to look at versus income. But if you're talking more on the side of you need a money partner, quote unquote, for the down payment, if we're only going like say 75% LTV and you need to cover that other 25% at closing, and you also need to make sure that you have the payments and any fees associated with closing, it's absolutely something we do. It's going to depend on the lender how you go by doing that, though. In general, I shouldn't say in general, a lot of lenders, us included, depending on the individual, we're going to require that they are in your LLC or corporation, and they're a member, so that we can verify that it's coming directly from the company and that you actually do have access to the funds, versus just somebody that's going to be a co-guarantor on the loan. So it really depends. I would say in general, yes, and it does happen a lot that there is a partner associated with an application for a loan. But it's really going to depend what you're looking for, what kind of deal it is, and ultimately who you're talking to as far as a lender. So yes and no and maybe. Hopefully that's vague enough for you.
Awesome. Okay, so we got Rick here. He's asking, he is asking a private question. Rick, do I have your permission to, reveal what the question is? He sent me a private message here.
Sure.
Let me see here. I'm guessing. So Rick, I know you asked me a private question. We'll go ahead and reserve that question later because it has been sent to me privately, and it looks like the nature of the question is private. So we're gonna go save that for later. We got Civic one more time here. Is there a way then enough equity in the deal? Would you finance all closing costs and points into the loan?
For a purchase, no. That's not something that would be feasible. I mean, ultimately, we'd be giving a loan and just paying ourselves back. That doesn't really make sense on our end. But if we're talking about a refinance, there's always an ability to do a cash out. So there's two types of refinancing you do. It's either cash out or rate and term. Rate and term, generally, if you're doing a rate and term, it's probably because you've got another hard money lender or a private money lender. Their rates are too high, and maybe your credit score has gotten better and you want to refinance into a better private or hard money loan. That we're just basically going to give you enough money to pay off the other lender and give you the new rate and term. But you can do something called a cash out, meaning that if there's enough equity in the deal and the lender, again, just a ballpark, 75% is their max they would do on a deal. You only need 60% to close out your other loan, and you can take out 15 extra percent, then that's a situation where we can deduct that extra 15% and take points and cost out of it for us. So that's any fees that we have to close the application or close the deal, and also any points that would be due to us and our investors. So there are ways to do it. It's less common for a purchase. I can think of one time I've actually done on a purchase, but it was somebody that we knew and that we had a relationship with. But in general, refinance is the only way you're going to be able to cover those costs in the deal itself.
Yep. Yeah, and be careful, guys, not to over leverage, right? I mean, the whole premises of what happened in 2008 was the fact that banks were giving these crazy 110%, 120% loan to value loans. So that's one thing to be careful of. And we do have another, I'd say, conversation or a webinar that we did on how to do owner financing, and this will blow some of you guys out. Some of the deals that I've done, I mean, no money down, less than 5% down, owner financing. So there are conversations that we can have if funding is a little bit of challenge for you. For fix and flippers, I think Jesse, that's more of your target, right? For you want to engage more with fix and flippers, or
Honestly, either way is great for us. I mean, refinances are much more straightforward because we know exactly what we need to get done, especially on rate and term and cash out, because you already have the property and we know exactly what it looks like as is if it's been on the market. Fix and flip, that's a large part of our business, but I don't have a preference either way, and I don't think most lenders do.
Sure.
In general, refinances are quicker. They're easier to get done, and it's easier to negotiate the deal. But there's a lot more options in a refinance as far as covering cost. But even what you're saying with owner financing, private money lenders and hard money lenders can work towards owner financing as well. I mean, if they're only willing to cover a portion of it, we can also cover 20% LTV. So there's plenty of situations, and just like you said, you really shouldn't over leverage if you can in a property.
Awesome. All right, so we're gonna take one last question. I know we're at the 40-minute mark here, so we want to make sure we're respecting everyone's time, because we did say this is gonna be 30 minutes, so we kind of give you guys a 10-minute bonus. I should say. So we'll take a last question from Civic, and I know we just got a question in. We'll go ahead and translate that. I guess off camera, or I should say off microphone. So Civic asks, do you lend on raw land?
No. There's nothing for us to really collateralize in raw land. So
right.
We don't. There are lenders that do raw land, but typically they're not in real estate. Or if they do raw land, it's some part of a larger ground up construction deal, which we can do, but it's very atypical.
Right. All right. So I know we have one more question. We'll take that off microphone. And then actually, I know this individual. So I'll go and talk to this individual. But in respect of time for everyone, we'll go and close it out. I want to thank Jesse for joining us as a guest here today, for our podcast. You guys will be able to find this recording if you guys are watching live or listening to it live, I should say. You guys will be able to find this both on our website, thekwakbrothers.com, as well as our SoundCloud account profile, soundcloud.com/the Kwak Brothers. And we'll also have this on YouTube available for you guys to download and translate it into an MP3 file. You guys can listen to it on the go, while you're driving, or whether you're working out, jogging, whatever you guys would like to do. So that's pretty much it for our podcast today. Thank you, Jesse, once again. And thank you so much, guys, for the live audience. And I will talk to you guys later. All right? Take care, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast with Jesse here. And I forgot to mention, we just released our owner financing cheat sheet guide. This cheat sheet guide includes a flowchart, questions to ask, also key benefits to the seller, and other few things and information that will help you get owner financing deals across your table. Now, if this cheat sheet guide can show you where to find the deals, how to negotiate for it, and how to ultimately close for it, what will be the cost? Right? Well, right now we're actually giving this away for absolutely free. There's no cost. There's no fees or anything. All you have to do is go to thekwakbrothers.com/cheat guide, and again, that's thekwakbrothers.com/cheat guide. All you have to do is just fill out your information real quick, and you will get the cheat guide sent to you via email. Download it, print it, and guys, I hope you guys go out there and make some killing with seller financing deals. All right, take care now.